Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer because today we are tackling the ultimate philosophical paradox. I mean, this is a concept that has literally challenged the greatest thinkers for over 1800 years. Just imagine for a second dedicating your entire existence to saving every living being from suffering. But at the exact same time, you hold the absolute unwavering conviction that those beings and the suffering itself are ultimately just an illusion. How in the world does a human mind hold both of those seemingly totally contradictory ideas without just completely breaking? Well, that is exactly what we are going to unpack today.
Welcome, everyone. We are going on a really fascinating journey today to decode the core message of Role 82 of the ancient Mahaprajnaparamita Sastra. Now, this text was translated by the legendary scholar Kumar Jiva, and it's attributed to Nagarjuna. It is absolutely a towering masterpiece of Mahayana Buddhist philosophy. So, throughout this explainer, we're going to look at the exact dialogue between the Buddha and his disciple, Subhuti. We're going to break down their ancient wisdom into really clear, tangible concepts that you can actually apply to your modern human experience.
So here's our roadmap for the journey. We'll be looking at the six perfections, then we'll meet the supreme guide, confront the paradox of emptiness, learn about action without attachment, and finally map out the true bodhisattva path.
All right, let's jump straight into section 1, the six perfections, the roster of virtues.
We've got a really powerful roster of virtues here: generosity, morality, patience, effort, meditation, and wisdom. These are known as the six perfections, or paramitas. But here is the absolutely crucial catch that the Buddha points out. The first 5 virtues on this list, generosity, morality, patience, effort, and meditation, they are fundamentally blind on their own. Seriously. You could literally be the most generous and disciplined person on the planet, but without that final perfection, you're essentially just wandering around in the dark.
To actually give those blind virtues sight, you need what's called prajna paramita, which translates to the perfection of wisdom. The Buddha explains that this absolute supreme virtue acts as the captain. It's the ultimate guide for all your other good deeds. In fact, without prajna paramita, those first 5 practices don't even earn the title of perfections. It's this specific, incredibly profound wisdom that allows you to act purely, without being held back by your own ego. And let's be honest, our ego always wants to grab the steering wheel, right?
Which brings us to section 2, the supreme guide, visualizing wisdom. The Buddha brilliantly illustrates this whole concept by comparing those first 5 virtues acting alone to a clumsy left hand. Think about it. Have you ever tried doing a really complex task with your non-dominant hand? It's awkward, it's super limited, and honestly, things usually go wrong. But when you add the perfection of wisdom, it turns your actions into a highly capable right hand. All of a sudden, your generosity and your effort become naturally dexterous, precise, and profoundly effective. It's a total game changer.
In another really fascinating analogy from the text, wisdom is compared to the magical wheel of a mythological wheel-turning king. So, picture this. The king has this massive army with 4 distinct divisions. But it's the divine wheel, this magical vanguard floating ahead in the sky, that perfectly guides the vast army exactly where it needs to go. The Buddha says Prajnaparamita is exactly like this wheel. It flawlessly guides the other 5 perfections straight to ultimate omniscience, without showing any bias or favoritism to a single virtue.
So the crucial point here is perfectly captured in this quote about rivers. No matter what magnificent good deeds you do, on their own, they're really just scattered rivers and tiny streams. But when Prajnaparamita guides them, they flow together into the Ganges and ultimately merge into the single vast ocean of enlightenment, which the text calls Sarvajanya. They become one unified, massive force of awakening.
And that leads us right into section 3, the paradox of emptiness, Subhuti's ultimate question.
Now, this is really the climax of the text. Subhuti is listening to all of this, and he realizes there's a massive logical friction here. There's a huge gap between what the Buddha is teaching about the ultimate nature of reality and what we're actually supposed to do in our daily lives. So he essentially asks the ultimate existential question. He's like, if nothing is a true self-nature, if everything is fundamentally empty and the world as we perceive it is just an illusion, then why should we even bother? Why practice the perfections? Why exert massive effort trying to save anyone or do good deeds at all if literally none of this is real? The Buddha's profound answer totally resolves the paradox. He explains that true wisdom means recognizing the emptiness of the world, yes, for sure, but simultaneously acting with immense compassion, because sentient beings are wildly upside down and trapped inside that illusion.
He says, if I do not practice expedient means, I cannot deliver sentient beings from birth and death. Basically, the Bodhisattva sees the illusion clearly, but chooses to step right back into the matrix out of pure, unadulterated compassion for everyone who's still suffering inside of it. Because to them, the suffering feels incredibly real.
Let's look at how to actually do this in Section 4. Action without attachment, the psychological framework.
So how do we actually perform these good deeds without burning out or getting tangled up in our own egos? How do we live in the world, do good things, and yet remain completely unattached to the drama of it all? Well, the text gives us this very specific framework for non-attachment, using generosity as the prime example. Step 1, you give purely for the sake of benefiting others. Step 2 is where the wisdom really kicks in. You have to profoundly realize that the gift, you as the giver and the person receiving it, are all completely empty of inherent permanence, meaning they will all eventually decay. And step 3, you must dwell nowhere and expect absolutely nothing in return. You don't even attach yourself to the identity of being a generous person.
And this right here brilliantly illustrates the ultimate trap. The text explicitly warns that the very moment you cling to your identity as a savior, or the second you think to yourself, hey, look at me, I am practicing the perfection of wisdom, you have entirely lost the path. You've brought your ego right back into the center of the frame. True wisdom has absolutely no grasping whatsoever. None.
When you compare normal worldly action to bodhisattva action, you can really see how this ancient philosophy is actually the ultimate modern cure for burnout. Worldly action is deeply attached to results, right? It's driven by the ego needing validation, which inevitably leads to exhaustion when things don't go our way. Bodhisattva action, however, operates with immense power and compassion, but expects literally nothing in return. Because the bodhisattva doesn't cling to the outcome, their energy is infinite. They simply do the work. It's beautiful. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the true bodhisattva path, the journey to omniscience.
When we trace this chronological progression, it's clear how a practitioner scales their impact over time. And according to the Buddha's dialogue with Subhuti, this is definitely not something you just achieve over a single weekend retreat. In the first eons, the focus is strictly on rigorously practicing the perfections without attachment, just getting the self out of the way. Then, in the middle eons, the bodhisattva expands outward, using expedient means to gather and perfectly guide sentient beings out of their suffering. And finally, after countless lifetimes of this pure, unattached action, they achieve sarvajna, which is ultimate omniscience.
The Buddha's ultimate summarizing instruction in this text is to cultivate an unfettered mind, to dwell nowhere. You don't dwell in form, you don't dwell in feeling, you don't even dwell in the concept of enlightenment itself. You engage completely, vibrantly, and compassionately with the world, while your mind remains entirely free and untethered.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Consider your own life right now, your own projects, your own relationships. Ask yourself, what expectations or ego-driven attachments can you let go of today? If you drop the need for recognition, if you just drop the anxiety about the ultimate outcome, you might just experience the true, limitless freedom of the compassionate paradox. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this ancient wisdom helps clear a path for you today.